bombing would stop. As soon as the cannon stopped, that meant it was time for raiding the trenches. So you knew as soon as the cannon stopped, that means and a charge is coming right away. And so there'll be little signs of the, and then if the cannon start up again, that means the charge is stopped. So and then there's also little signs of where the enemy thinks you are on the battlefield, wherever you are on the battlefield. And there are some little signs right now. Bishop Williamson has been doing liaison comments every week about the resistance now. We've got to keep resisting. And it's interesting psychological, I mean, whether it's a psychological tool or not, another issue. But this is the Resistance 2 is this latest one here. And then also with the mainstream society, putting out of a new declaration, not declaration, but just Father Glaz putting out. Father Glaz is the main, not Father Glaz, but Father, doesn't matter. The priest who puts out, takes care of DG. He's the main kind of the main voice of the society of St. Pius X. You know what we stand for and believe. And it's interesting. There's commentary just this last week on Monsignor Pozzo, Archbishop Pozzo. And Archbishop Pozzo keeps coming up recently. Pozzo was the one who in 2006, Bishop Pozzo, he may have even been not yet a bishop. No, I think he was a bishop. Bishop Pozzo. He's the one who may be, rather in 2012, he's the one that issued the complaint to the Good Shepherd, the Bon Pasteur Institute in France. The Good Shepherd Institute, run by Father Olanier and company. Not Father Olanier, but Father. Oh my goodness. The priest that left St. Nicholas de Chardonnay. Now I forget everybody's name. Anyway, so that he made a complaint in 2012. We allowed you to start your seminary in 2006. We allowed you to start the Good Shepherd in 2006 Institute and to study for the priesthood. And they didn't have to sign any papers. No papers had to be signed. But in 2012 they said, you are not teaching Vatican II in your seminary. You must be teaching the documents of Vatican II. And you have to change your teaching to be in accord with Vatican II or we are shutting you down. Who was the one who put that note out? His name was Archbishop Pozzo. Go back to 1988. One of the priests who was there with Archbishop Lefebvre in 1988 was Father Pozzo. And so that we're having the same priest all the way through. And now Pozzo is the one who also in 2013 and 14 is now being promoted as a good bishop, our good contact in Rome. And now there's an interview about Archbishop Pozzo, and we're seeing the normal communist kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back in order to seal a revolution into people's minds. There was a recent interview in Poland just a few weeks ago or a month ago, very recently, and just reported by the Society, I think just this last week, with Archbishop Pozzo, concerning what is the status of the SSPX. And he says that the SSPX, Pope Francis gave the approval to the confessions of the SSPX, and he also gave the approval of the marriage of the SSPX. Does that mean the SSPX is regular and that you can go to SSPX masses? And Archbishop Pozzo responded by saying, the situation of the society is still not regular. All that the Pope did was for the good of souls. He allowed the confessions to be valid, whereas they weren't valid before. And he allowed the marriages to be considered as valid for the good of souls. He gave them the right to this right of doing the marriages. And therefore, for the sake of souls, you can get married and go to confession in the society. But you're still supposed to be approved. You're still supposed to be fully approved to have a normal canonical status in the church. So the society is still somewhat irregular. And and then because the society has to make its agreement on the documents, he wasn't very precise on the documents on the situation of the council and the Vatican II and the council. So then Father Glaz, not Father Glaz, the priest in the DG, he's always the one writing the commentaries. Father Glaz is a professor in the seminary. But he says that what do you call it? Well, you see then, out from the very mouth of Archbishop Peltzer himself, it's still a matter of doctrine. It's still a matter of doctrine. So you have the word doctrine being brought up again. And yet, no statement as to what the doctrine is. This is his classic method in the new Society of St. Pius X and Dici. Oh, it's still a matter of doctrine. For those people who might know what that means, those people on the inside, who know the secret sign and who are the conservatives in the society, they will be able to say, ah, it's still about doctrine. What he means is we're still traditional. For anybody on the outside, they go, well, what does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. It never says what the doctrine is. And so you have the acceptance of the Council in the Doctrinal Declaration of 2012, and then saying, well, we don't really fully, they're saying that we need to accept it, but you already accepted it. We're still considered irregular, but now we're canonical. And this is called, this is a thermatization of the next stage of the revolution. So that now priests of the Society of St. Pius X, I just ran into the case already in Australia, this trip, because I said Mass, you know, so the priest, a priest said, you can go to Father Pfeiffer, you can go to the Society for confessions, because their confessions are now valid. And you can go to Father Pfeiffer's Mass, but don't go to confession because his confession isn't valid because it's not approved. So now we have some priests who are saying, oh, you know, the confessions of the resistance and the confessions of the priests outside of the society, they might not be valid. So remember, and then Father Glass, not from the guy, but anyway, he says at the end of the article, you see, the bishop still doesn't recognize the state of necessity in the church. What is the state of necessity in the church? So what's happening is we're at a stage in which now the average young society priest is going to say, well, we're legitimate because our marriages are valid. We already have now multiple cases of priests, particularly in Europe, but also it's starting to happen over here. Some of our priests in France, they will not do a marriage anymore, period. They will not do a marriage except it's approved by the local bishop. This has been going on for years. Now the society marriage is approved by the local bishop. Now those priests can now do their marriages. If we don't accept our marriages as valid. And so that this is a gobbling up of the society inside the peace. So as the society goes in the peace, what's the normal procedure? When the Catholic Church collapsed in 1965, Protestants were always anti-Catholic. But if you went to a Protestant church in 1964, all Protestants wore their suit and tie. All of them dressed properly, and they talked about Jesus, they talked about the law of God, they talked about the Bible, they talked about morality, because the Catholic Church was up here. And they hated the Catholic Church, so they had to be a little bit beyond it. But then the Catholic Church collapsed. Now they no longer go to church with suit and tie. Well, what happened to the Protestants? They threw out their suits, they threw out their ties, they put on more shorts and t-shirts than we have, and so that the Protestants waited for the Catholics to collapse first, and then the Protestants followed. Now, there's a little sign right now that the fake resistance is playing along with the game, is what's happening right now with the very term resistance. We still have to resist. You know, this is one of the psychological tricks. When you're getting someone to want to quit, you don't have to quit yet. It's not over yet. There's still hope. It's not hopeless yet. You don't have to quit. You don't have to give up. And so you hear the word quit, you hear the word give up, and you forget the word don't have to. And after a while, you quit and you give up. It's a psychological way to help someone lose. You don't have to quit yet. Don't think you're losing just because you're a loser. No, you can still not lose. But you're losing. Don't give up. You're not losing. And you hear the word lose, lose, quit, quit, lose, lose, quit, quit. But he said, don't lose, don't lose, don't quit, don't lose, don't quit, don't lose, don't quit, don't lose, don't quit, don't lose, don't lose. And then they're dead. We're hearing the don't lose, don't quit mantra from Bishop Williamson now. Don't lose, don't quit. Still keep going. It's not over. It's not over. It's almost over, buddy. But it's not over. It's not over. It's not over. It's not over. When you hear it's not over, it's not over, it's not over, that's one of the signs that the enemy believes that we're near collapse. It's one of the signs. And it's also, it could be a sign of two things. One, we're near collapse, or from the, what's his name, the Zhu Fan Pu, whatever his name is, the Art of War, what's his name? I can't remember his name now. What's the name of the Art of War general? He's got 3 or 4 letters in his name. Zai or Zhu, whatever he's talking about. I can't remember his name today. So, but the Art of War, he says, when you're about to have victory, speak of defeat. When you are in danger of collapse, speak of victory. So that when you believe you're about ready to collapse, be bold and speak of victory. And when you're ready to collapse, tell the other guy he's a loser and he's got no chance, in order to delay his attack. So what we're seeing right now are little bitty signs of one of those 2 things is going on. Either the enemy believes he's next to his victory, or he's afraid that he's next to his defeat. But we're seeing the sign of one of those 2 things. The enemy either is believing he's getting his victory soon, and therefore he's getting out his last words of vomit, or he thinks his defeat is coming soon. So that now in the last few days, like Mr. Williams says, we got to be resistance. We still got to resist. And he includes in the resistance Novus Ordo priests. He includes in the resistance anybody who's fighting abortion. Includes in the resistance anybody who's resisting, I don't know, the what do you call it, the who won the Super Bowl last year or whatever. So resisting anybody who's resisting anything, resisting abortion, resisting anything bad. So the word resistance is starting to be muddled in its meaning. He says it's a communist tactic, changed the meaning of the word. See, before 1960, it was, we're Catholics. Catholic is someone who follows Christ, follows the church, believes in Catholic tradition, accepts the faith. But then the Catholics all went bonkers. So then we had to say we're traditional Catholics. Had to use the word traditional in front of Catholic. So that now, because the average Catholic no longer believes in teachings of Christ, the average Catholic no longer goes to the new Mass, to the true Mass, they go to the new Mass. The average Catholic doesn't believe anymore. So now we're going to have to use the word traditional Catholic. Then 88 comes into the picture. 1988, we got the consecration of the 4 bishops. And now we have Novus Ordo priests, such as the priest of Eternity of St. Peter, and Novus Ordo priests, the end of Christ the King, and Novus Ordo priests saying the Latin Mass. So they are going to be called traditional. So now the word traditional has been stolen. So then there's traditional Catholics. And now they're working on the word resistance. We're running out of words. We're going to start using signs. We're running out of words. So that now every time the truth has to be given a new word, because the enemy gobbles up the word. We are just Catholics, that's it. We are just Catholics. And outside of the Catholic faith, and outside of the Catholic Church, and outside of Catholic truth and Catholic tradition, there's no salvation. And what's necessary to conquer all the problems of the world today is the Catholic faith, the Catholic truth, the Catholic tradition. And so you can see in now we've got a new superior general in the Society of St. Pius X, Father Pagliarani. And Father Pagliarani is a lovable guy, but he's basically quite liberal. He's more liberal than Bishop Follet. And he's very much involved in continuing the work of the society in its whole liberal direction, in taking this away from the faith and getting us away from the truth. Look at the website of the Society of St. Pius X. The word Catholic, the word persecuted, the word traditional is all being applied to the Chinese being persecuted in China, to the persecution in Beirut, I mean in the Middle East, to the Catholics in Poland, to Bishop Schneider, to Cardinal Burke, to Bishop Follet. So it's all mixed together. So that we no longer think that persecuted Catholics equal anybody who's persecuted because they're against abortion. This year, the Catholic Traditional Conference in Kansas City is going to be on life. Life. Because of the 50th anniversary of Humanae Vitae. What is the Catholic Church really? So we're celebrating Humanae Vitae. So we celebrated 50 years of the Council. The SSPX joined in that holy year. 50 years of the Council in which Satan entered into the Catholic Church. We celebrated the 50 years of that, 1965, 2015. Now we have a conference of celebrating life. 50 years after 1968 Humanae Vitae, which is really not a good Catholic encyclical. And so it's not a Catholic encyclical, but it's an encyclical which is a little better. At least it says you shouldn't have abortion, and that you should have some respect for human life, but it does not follow the teachings of the Catholic Church. He doesn't repeat the teaching of the last 2,000 years. He mentions, for instance, overpopulation might be a real problem, and guess who's the first pope that said that? Pius XII. Well, overpopulation is a problem. We have to be careful about overpopulation. Well, you still got to have big families. You got to be careful of overpopulation. Pius was the first one to say that. But then he emphasized the importance of big families. Now then, Paul VI comes in, and he doesn't even emphasize big families. He does mention overpopulation, and he says there has to be a respect for life because life is inalienable. But he doesn't refer to Christ in the correct way. He doesn't follow the gospel. It's not a good encyclical. Now the society is going to promote it as the conservative encyclical because conservatives are pro humani vitae. So what's happening? As the world becomes more and more anti-Catholic, Catholic becomes further and further away from the world. And to be Catholic equals to be insane. To be Catholic equals to be outside of society and worthy of reprobation and prison and everything else. So in order to avoid that terrible state, we're going to stay 2 steps or 3 steps or 4 steps or 5 steps behind whatever the worst of. If you're a conservative, you stay 1 step behind Pope Francis. If you're very conservative, you're 2 steps behind him. If you're extremely conservative, you're 3 steps behind him. If you're traditional, you're 10 steps behind him. And if you're the resistance, you're 12 steps behind him. So that now so that everybody is going to just be, and rather than simply following the gospel and the truth that never changes, we're going to keep traveling down the path. If they make 1 step towards Satan, we make another step towards Satan. But we're not closer to the devil because on the same distance from the liberals. That's why Bishop Sheen says, don't judge by the man to your left or the man to your right. Don't judge by that. You judge by the unchanging beacon of divine truth, which is above, that never moves. Are we close to that? Are we in accord with that? Or are we against that? And the whole modern world is against that. So now we got the this resistance. What are we saying about this resistance? So now Bishop Williamson has his latest delays and comments about the resistance. This is the second one or third one on the resistance. Resistance, none of us may yet resign. We're part of a great God's glorious design. Hear the word resign. Hear the word quit. It's in order to get that idea into your head. Don't quit. Quit, 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 quit. Don't quit. Small don't, huge quit. Resign. Don't resign yet. What does that mean? It means you're going to resign. Don't resign yet. It's not yet. Resistance, none of us may yet resign. Think about that. It's beautiful poetry. This is high poetry of Bishop Williamson. Resistance, none of us may yet resign. We're part of great God's glorious design. Now, what is resistance? We keep having to use a new term because the enemies have stolen our terminology. Resistance is simply Catholic. When do you resign from fighting the devil? After you've done it for 50 years, you go into a retirement program? No, you never resign. Catholics never resign. They don't quit. There is no quitting. There is no resigning. I mentioned about one of my parishioners who used to preach about not quitting. So one of my parishioners came to me from Denver. He says, you know, Father, I stopped smoking for 3 months. Then I remembered your sermons, Father. You can't be a quitter. No, I'm not a quitter. So I went back. I said, well, that's encouraging, Steve. Yeah, so he's not a quitter, right? So he was thinking about quitting for 3 months, but he got over it. The fact is that we're not supposed, Catholics don't quit. They don't resign, period. But notice the idea being put into your head by a bishop of the church. None of us may yet resign. No, this is the time, we know from the Blessed Virgin Mary that as things get worse, we're closer to our victory. If you look outside the window, you'll see that Satan is the one who's nervous, and he should be nervous. He's slithering back and forth more than usual. Why? Because pretty soon there's going to come a foot down on his head, and he's going to get smashed. And he knows it's coming very soon. He knows the truth. The Satan knows the truth. The worse things get, the closer we are to victory, and we must never grow tired in doing good. That's what Christ says in the gospel. That's what St. Paul says just a couple days ago in the epistle. Never grow tired in doing good. That's the message of the apostle of Christ. Never grow tired in doing good. Never resign. Don't look for a time to resign, and recognize as long as you're in the army of Christ, you're going to have to fight. And there will always be enemies in the camp of Christ. As St. Augustine points out, we had one night only. God planted wheat in a field. Now, before the morning came, what happened? cockle started to grow up amongst the wheat. An enemy has done this. There has been a putting of cockle in the midst of the wheat. Cockle was put in the wheat from the very beginning. It is a divine revelation that there will always be heretics in the church. There will always be traitors in the church. There will always be sinners in the church. And there will always be a war from the moment of our conception and then our baptism until the moment of death. We are part of the church militant. Hence there can never be a concept of resigning, backing down, or quitting. Absolutely never. And then, so what's happening now is we're finding this word resistance is becoming very big, spreading out, you know, and then what is the statement here? When John Paul II became Pope in 1978, a number of Catholics were genuinely hopeful that the situation of the church would get better than it did under Paul VI. But I can remember Archbishop Lefebvre saying that if John Paul II did not clean house in Rome within the first 6 months of his pontificate, he would not be able to break with the policies established in Rome by Paul VI. What's the focus of Bishop Williamson? Always the same. Clean house. Get rid of the bad guys. It's like in a movie, you know, in the movies, there's always a bad guy. At the end, you get to have a 6-hour fight with the hero, followed by his brains getting blown out, him being thrown off the cliff, and the bad guy is gone and everything is great. No, not as long as you're in this life. Guess what happens when one bad guy dies? Another one takes his place. There are no vacancies in the bad guy hotel. As soon as one of them dies, another one fills in. Another one fills in, and another one fills in, and there will never be a time when there's a shortage of them. Not until the end of the world. And so, he had to get rid of the bad guys. Again, I'm not going to focus on the faith. So that Bishop Fillet is doing the same thing. He's saying, well, we're not the only ones criticizing the council anymore. We're not the only ones criticizing. There's other people that criticize and say there's problems in the church. Yeah, there are many people that criticize and say there's problems in the church. The liberals are complaining there's problems in the church. I've heard some liberal sisters complaining there's a big problem in the church because their donations are down. They got a big problem. Their donations are down. For them, that's their problem. Others see a problem in the church because of the fact that the faith is out. Everybody sees a problem. One sister told my brother, he said the greatest problem in the church is that they're not trying to stop, what do you call it, the fuels, what do you call it, emissions, you know, harmful emissions into the ozone. And that she's devoted her entire sisterhood to bringing an end to the ozone emissions. Of the, you know, one good way is to get rid of your carbon footprint. Get rid of your carbon footprint, exit the life, give your body to the science, and you'll help the problem. But you know, but the fact is that nonetheless, so that so everybody says there's a problem. Saying there's a problem does not mean you're with Christ. Saying there's a problem doesn't mean you're a good guy. Doesn't mean that at all. So, and then pointing the problem to be out people, that's always wrong. The problem is not people. The problem is sin. The problem is heresy. The problem is error. These are the problems, not people. We have to sometimes specifically condemn people. That's always a last resort action of the church. And we do have to execute people. We do have to condemn people by name sometimes. But the error and the heresy is the reason why. And the error and the heresy is what we're after. Because the error and the heresy is what destroys souls. So he said he didn't clean house. Similarly, if Father Bagliarani does not clean house soon at the top of the society, Father Bagliarani New Society of Superior, the followers around him of Bishop Fillet are liable to hinder him from making any significant change in the disastrous policies of his predecessor. You know, when St. Pius X became Pope, he had wicked cardinals all around him. He couldn't remove them all. He knew that Rampolla was bad. He knew that there were many wicked cardinals in the Vatican. He could not remove them all. He couldn't do that. He couldn't remove them as a Catholic without having caught them for a specific crime, giving them a chance to prove their innocence, and after they proved their innocence, or had been able to prove their innocence, then be punished. He couldn't do that. So what did he do? He took action. What was his action? His action was supernatural. The action of St. Pius X was to condemn those individuals whom he could catch, which were very few. But that was part of what he did, only a secondary part. His primary action was, let's give Holy Communion to those that are 7 years old. Bring the age of Holy Communion down. Let's establish Eucharistic crusade. Let's make the anti-modernist oath and let the supernatural power of the divine truth change these priests. Let's make rules and regulations about errors and heresies in the church. Let's make an encyclical concerning Pascendi, concerning the modernism, and what modernism is, that people will be armed against the heresy of modernism, which is destroying the church. This is what modernism is. This is how it's destroying the faith. Beware of the modernists who uphold these errors and fight against them and get rid of their modernist books. He took practical steps involving the condemning of error, involving the supernatural response of prayer and penance and Holy Communion, and these are the steps he took. He didn't just simply go on a witch hunt. He didn't simply do that. When he caught some, he dealt with them. He also recognized the answer to modernism is not to kill all the modernists. It's not the answer to modernism. It's not the solution. The answer to modernism is to condemn modernism and to arm the faithful with the true Catholic faith in order that they might be able to stand up against errors and heresies of modernism. And then again, the focus on persons, always the same. The significant change in disaster policy of the predecessor, the rot that started with Greg in the 1990s and has had time to put down some deep roots. Therefore, if anyone is concerned about the future of the resistance, quote unquote, Bishop Williamson speaking again, on the grounds that the society is coming back on track with a new superior general, so that the resistance will no longer be necessary, this gives you the impression that maybe it is coming back on track. It's a very, very interesting psychological tool. It's not a good sign. So that they're coming back on track because we've got a new superior general. And so it's like saying there's a new guy, there's a new executioner. The executioner is a guy with a little black hood that carries an axe, and then he's instructed, there's the next criminal, chop his head off. There's a new executioner. Does that encourage the next guy in line? Maybe the new executioner is not as tired as the other one. He's rested. He'll be able to chop his head off more quickly. Does that encourage that there's a new executioner? There needs to be a change of the policy of execution. There needs to be a removal of the axe. It needs to be changing of the rules and regulations that are leading people to be having their head chopped off. That's encouraging maybe, but not changing the individual. So then Pagliarani is a good man. He surely means well, and we pray for him. Okay, that's fine. But if he chooses first and foremost to unite liberals and anti-liberals within the society by means of human and political compromises, he'll never save the society from its present downward slide. What does downward slide mean? It means it hasn't gone off the cliff yet. The society went off the cliff a long time ago. And when you say present downward slide, things are getting dangerous. How long can you say that? There has already been a change of doctrine. There's already been a change of supernatural policy in the Society of St. Pius X. There's already a change of what we express. Look at the websites of the Society right now. If you follow them, you'll lose your faith. It's pretty simple. Look at the publications. Follow them, you lose your faith. Go to the Life Conference. It says they're going to have the best, most meaningful conferences they ever had. You know, so very meaningful, and the best conferences. You got to go to Kansas City this year for the best, most meaningful conferences ever in the Angelus Press Conference. So then imagine a convert being led by the grace of God, even today, to the Catholic faith. By its very principles, it must be incarnate somewhere. He may well not find it in the article Antics of the Novus Ordo. He may not find it in the Novus Ordo. Well, then, well, he might. Bishop Williamson always uses this kind of speaking. He may not find it in the Novus Ordo, which means he might find it in the Novus Ordo. Answer, no. He may not find it in the Novus Ordo. And then the next thing was it, and then he may not well find it in the Novus Ordo, Antics of the Novus Ordo, in the Antics of the Novus Ordo. And notice that the use of the terminology, very important. Not the Novus Ordo, but the Antics of the Novus Ordo. The Novus Ordo may be fine, but the antics are not fine. And any good Novus Ordo priest would fully agree with that statement. Any good conservative, yeah, that's right. The Novus Ordo is good, but the antics are terrible. So he may not find it in the antics of the Novus Ordo. He turns away from the conciliar church towards tradition. He finds the Society of St. Pius X, but then he discovers that it is going conciliar. It already went conciliar. Been there, done that, finished. Where does he turn to next? If there is no resistance, He risks giving up on the incarnate Christ. Somebody in the church must be living by the logic of the true faith of the 20th centuries. Otherwise, there risk being souls to conclude that the faith is obsolete in today's world. Doesn't say anything. So you might be Catholic Novus Ordo, you might be Catholic with a society, but you risk not being Catholic if there's not something like a resistance, and that so there's something like a resistance, whatever that is. He risks giving up the incarnate Christ. It's a danger. Likewise, souls letting go into the society's high trapeze need a Catholic safety net to fall into, or without the name of, with or without the name of resistance. So there's going to be other possibilities too. And thirdly, there is any number of ways of mixing whiskey with water, but they all depend on somebody producing pure whiskey. Similarly, there is an even greater variety of ways of mixing our Lord with the world, but they all depend upon some people upholding in their lives, and not only in their words, an example for all of us to see true Catholic living. That is liberalism, modernism. The teaching of the liberalism is, or one of its teachings, the good liberals. There must be good men who will be an example to all men. The way ecumenism was spread in the beginning was that we are the Catholics, we're the best. And other people see us, and they benefit by what is like us in them. So Protestants have a little bit of more Catholicism in them, so there's a lot more good in Protestant. The Hindus have less Catholic in them, so there's less good in Hindus. Atheists have the least amount of Catholic in them, so there's the less good in them. So there's, but how can there be a good atheist? How can there be a good Hindu? How can there be a good Muslim? How can there be a good Protestant unless there's one really good and pure guy who's their example? So the good, pure Catholic, he's the example that the Protestant can look to and be a good Protestant, that the Novus Ordo can look to and be a good Novus Ordo, and that the Hindu can look to and be a good Hindu, and they're all going to be fine. So that we're going to be looking to, there has to be someone to look to as a good example. That's not the teaching of the Church. The Catholic Church teaches, unless you follow Christ, enter into his mystical body, receive the true and holy Roman Catholic faith, you must be damned. Period. Those who have more of it, you see, when you're in the Ark of Noah, there were those who were right next to the Ark. They drowned with a nice view. Then there were those who were further away. They drowned with the Ark in the distance. Then there were those on the other side of the world. They drowned, they couldn't even see the Ark. What do they all have in common? They drowned. Only those inside the Ark are saved. The Catholic Church is necessary for salvation in 2018, as it has always been necessary for salvation. That's a new direction of the Society of St. Pius X, this whole new movement to create an elite. What is this elite? They're going to be our guys who are going to be rich businessmen with moral values, who are going to be respected by all. And when a normal man, wow, that guy's a millionaire, that guy says his rosary, that guy's got 15 kids, that guy wears a nice tie, I just want to be like him. And so I'm going to become a Catholic. That's the idea. And so that we're going to create an elite of, and that's the idea of the new St. Mary's, Kansas, the idea of they're trying to always have our, I was going to mention some of the names, but I won't. Some of our guys, some of my former parishioners, some of my former retreatants, who are always on the website of the society with their beautiful ties and saying beautiful words and being cool. They're coolness personified on the web. And so these cool dudes who are going to be cool Catholic dudes. And what's the emphasis is cool dude, and they're Catholic, man. And so therefore you're going to want to be a good Catholic because these are cool dudes. And they're all trying to imitate the modern idiotic, seeing the billboards now getting more painful. In the Delhi airport, they're all working on, they're trying to get the Indians to dress like Westerners and be like Westerners. So they have all this Western crap up there. And these guys are going, all trying to be cool. They're absolute faggots, they're idiots, they're morons, they got nothing going on there, but they're trying to be cool, and they're trying to represent this is how you dress, this is how you act. And now Catholics are trying to get into the cool game, so that we're going to have traditional Catholic cool. No, that's not going to be the answer. And this is playing the same game. We need to have good examples. You've got to be the true resistance with good examples to help others live Catholic living. High standards of doctrine and morals demanded by the souls of the Lord himself. And the fourth reason for the resistance not to resign or go out of business or give up the wearisome fight for the truth is that it cannot do so, because if it did, then as our Lord says, the stones of the street would cry out. There he says something that's true. And in other words, the truth may be smothered by all mankind, but it is not men, it is God who is in charge of the world, and God will never allow the truth to be completely silenced, because that would frustrate his purpose in creating the world, which is to populate heaven. Therefore, the resistance may tomorrow or the day after change form. And in this respect, its present formlessness will actually help. And in some form or other, God will make it continue. So keep your formlessness and keep standing for whatever you firmly believe in is the truth. And then be encouraged. And that God's going to still save people in the Novus Ordo, save people in whatever religion they belong to, and that don't quit yet. It's not time to quit. But there may be a time for a change. We may have to change our formlessness. So these are just meaningless statements. But what are they doing though? Quit, resign, change, formless, good signs in the society. Pagliarani might bring in a different direction, but then again he might not. Then again he might not. And so there's Bishop Williamson's word. And what does the society say? Oh, let's bring up the word doctrine one more time. But what doctrine? Well, let's not bother about that. And this is in order to complete the collapse. There must be very close to believing that we're on the verge of collapse, or very close to believing that the time of the victory of Our Lady is near. And that this is not a time to resign, not a time to change, not a time for formlessness. We continue to work with to the Fev. We don't quit. We don't play games. We don't quit at all. We stay with the whole Catholic faith. We don't play games with it in any way, shape, or form. There is no thought of any kind of resigning. It's rather victory. We are going to conquer. We stay with Christ and we have victory. There's no doubt about that. Our enemies shall be destroyed and defeated, and that's all there is to it. Stay firm in the faith. The victory is ours. And that though all men need the true Catholic faith, and we need soldiers in the army of Christ. That's what we need to be telling people today. Not this formlessness, meaninglessness of don't quit yet, which is sending the message out, quit, 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 quit. No, that's not the message. Better close here than we got. You have coffee or something there?
Yeah. Nothing, water only.
What is it?
Just water.
Just water, okay, that's fine. All right, God bless it. We'll say a prayer, then we'll make it a good. Oh, you're supposed to be unloading even during the... Yeah, okay. All right, okay. All right, thanks. We got it.